Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Thomas Van Kempen once again, here with another episode of Let's Animate. So when I left off, I was talking about my new plans for the Let's Animate series. Basically, just to give you the basic rundown of what I was talking about last time, I'm just going to release these whenever I actually have something to say, because I keep going on long hiatuses and apologizing for them. I'm basically just done with all that stuff, and I'm just going to be honest with this from now on. I'm just going to release these whenever I feel like making one and getting something off my chest. So think of this as a once-in-a-while soapbox for me to address a point, if you will. Yeah, sort of like those Leafy is Here videos, except rather than showing footage of Counter-Strike where he's just running around with a knife, I'm showing you footage of me animating a certain character or whatever. Anyways, so when I left off, I was working on that bar fight scene between a woman and two different men. That is finished now, and you can check it out on my YouTube channel if you like. I'll probably put a link in the description, all that good stuff. And what I'm doing now is I'm creating a looping animation of a drunk guy tumbling through the street. And this is actually a pretty simplistic one. I already finished it. Chances are I'll upload it later. The background's nothing special, and there's really no challenge behind this one other than maybe applying body physics. Real reason I made this one is because there is a website called loopdeloop.org where basically the challenge is every month they get a new theme for a kind of looping animation that you have to create. And basically you upload it, it competes with other animators looping cartoons, and it's a good way to get exposure that my animation teacher recommended, so that's what I'm creating this for. And May's concept or main theme or whatever, May's main theme is tumbling, and that's all the specification that they give, so I'm just animating a bit where a guy's tumbling through the street in a drunken manner. This one was actually quite easy to make, not gonna lie. The guy was simple and fast enough to draw up. It only took like a couple of days this time. And the background is pretty much nothing. It's basically just like a generic house and a bit of snow on the ground, and literally that's it. There's also a scrolling sidewalk that this thing has that scrolls by at the same pace that the guy walks. So yeah, there's nothing really special about this one. It just loops. But that said, I will still be putting it in my demo reel because, I don't know, something I worked on. Why the heck not? So yeah, that's pretty well it as far as what's going on right now. Main reason I wanted to talk about this video is because after one viewing of a certain movie, I officially have a new favorite film. And I'm quite excited about that. And I want to tell you about it during this episode. So, you might be thinking that it's pretty silly to get a new favorite movie after only watching through it once thus far. And you know what? You're definitely correct. That definitely is an oddity. However, that said, a movie, I believe, in order to determine what makes a good movie and what makes a bad movie, what it has to do, it has to be some fulfillment of some sort of fantasy. And you know, it can be any genre you want, it can be for any demographic you want, but it basically just has to exceed in what it's trying to accomplish. And yeah. And this movie succeeds in what it tries to accomplish with flying colors. This is easily like one of the best fantasy movies I've ever seen, and 2D animated movies too, for that matter. Anyway, the movie I'm referring to is Song of the Sea. It is a 2D animated film from 2014, and I gotta tell you, it's not probably, it is the best animated movie I've ever seen. The most gorgeous movie in general that I have ever seen. I'm still gushing about it. I still feel warm every time I think about it. It needs to be seen to be believed. And you know, it's it's wonderfully original. It's wonderfully colorful and creative. It has a great take on Irish mythology. It has wonderful morals like the importance of family bonding and the importance to not bottle up your feelings and to be honest with yourself about how you feel, and it's how it's okay to feel sadness, and it's it's so wonderfully creative, and it's just breathtaking visuals and music. And I actually got more out of this movie than I did Spirited Away, which is often considered to be the greatest animated movie of all time. Not anything against Spirited Away. I think that one's pretty spectacular too, but it didn't quite hit me on the same emotional level that this one did. Maybe I just identify with this one's conflict way more because, I know what it's like to have to try to get along with siblings and stuff like that. And I know what it's like to feel guilty about the way you treat family and all those things. And I'm just really into the visuals and all the music demonstrations, and I love all the allegories to Irish mythology, and every character is like some sort of allegory to a story that this kid's mom told him, and it's so good. Like, I basically just address the same points over and over, but this really is a masterful work that is outrageously underrated. I mean, it's been Oscar nominated a few times, thank God, and I think it did win a couple of Oscars too. Maybe I'm incorrect about that, but still. But that said, I find almost nobody talking about it. Like, this deserves to be on the same level as Spirited Away or Princess Mononoke, pretty well any Studio Ghibli film. It deserves to be on the same level as Beauty and the Beast or The Lion King or any of these movies that we constantly attribute to be one of the greatest films of all time. And yet I hear pretty well no one ever talking about it. And it's such an outrageous crime because it's so good. It's a movie that proves two things. 2D animation will always have a place, and original ideas will always be refreshing and accepted, even if it's not the most popular thing at the time. Because I've addressed several times how I'm sick to death of remakes and rehashes and reliance on nostalgia in order to make a quick buck. But every once in a while, you get something that's so mind-blowingly original that, like, it should be a staple in creating new culture for later generations. And the fact that it's not that prominent is just so heartbreaking because it needs to be seen. You need to show it to your kids. They will come out better people if you do. And it's so like heartwarming and heartbreaking, and it has this wonderfully simple but detailed story that's told brilliantly. It conveys its information really well, a lot like Akira does, actually. Not that this movie has anything in common with Akira, God no. Um, and it's oh man, I'm freaking gushing over here. And it also proves, like I said earlier, that there's always going to be a place for 2D animation. A lot of people think that like 3D is kind of taking over the medium, and I can definitely see that. It's certainly prominent and profitable, and I have nothing against 3D animators. They create beautiful work themselves as well, and more power to them if that's what they choose. But a lot of people like to undermine 2D as irrelevant or, behind the times or something. But then every once in a while you get a movie like this that proves just how spectacular 2D can be. And people need these kinds of movies in order to realize the importance of animation in our pop culture, because I would argue that animation, I realize I'm totally biased here, but I think it's safe to say that animation is probably the most defining art style of our current pop culture, because it's its drawing and its filmmaking and its music composition all rolled into one thing. And so much of our current culture comes out of it, like Disney and the Looney Tunes, and their kind of reintroduction of classic stories, and I really do think that animation is probably one of the most defining art forms of the 20th and 21st century, as well as live action film. Of course, I love live action film all the same, and that definitely has properties of its own. But animation just takes what you do in live action and adds so much more variables to it, and you create this wonderfully fantastic thing that'll be relevant for a super long time. And that's what I think Song of the Sea is, or at least that's what Song of the Sea should be. Like, it does so many things that so many animated movies try to do, but they fail miserably. They have likable child characters. Do you have any idea how hard it is to make a likable child character? Child characters are so often, at least in cartoons, so annoying or so whiny or so just painful to watch, and like they distract so much. And and whenever they're comic relief, they're always sort of pathetic, and they're always like an interference with the main plot. But here you see them become adults, and you see them feel the same way that kids actually feel, and the bond between this brother and sister feels genuine, and you can totally understand that the things that these kids feel. And, even though the brother admittedly is a little bit annoying in the first little bit, you definitely do grow to like him as he starts to really take responsibility. And, it never goes too far where it's like you stop rooting for him, because you know that he's just suffered a lot, and his dilemma is understandable. That's the main thing. And even though a lot of these characters have unlikable attributes, you end up really loving them by the end, because they're flawed. They're legitimately flawed, but they're only doing what they think is best, and they feel and demonstrate these things that we feel as people all the time, and all this stuff, and like I'm not even talking about the animation, because it's some of the most gorgeous visuals I've ever seen. I remember more out of this movie than I remember seeing from Spirited Away. Just all of these iconic depth perception shots, like this one where they're crossing over a bridge, or this bird's eye shot of the town that's kind of layered in a way that looks sort of flat, but you can kind of make out which buildings are in front of which, and it has like that unique aesthetic to it. There's this great shot of looking down on these fairies who are singing the songs with their little sister, and this shot of a giant walking through the ocean and crying, and this shot of friggin' these owls beating their heads against a window. That might take some context, because that just sounds hilarious, but it's so beautiful. It's like the Nostalgia Critic, when he reviewed Spirited Away for his Disdecember, he said that he felt jealous of Spirited Away, because it was something that was so marvelous and so spectacular that he couldn't see himself creating something like that. That's how I feel about Song of the Sea. I wish I had the talent and the skill and the creativity to create something this iconically marvelous and this beautiful and breathtaking, and I wish I had the capacity right now to make something like this, and my life will be complete if I make something as beautiful as this in my career as an animator. But, as of now, I'm just not there yet. And, I know it's not a solo thing, obviously. You need an entire team, blah, blah, blah. But my point being, if I can ever make something as beautiful and as much of a marvelous fantasy trip as this, I will be a more complete person by the end of it. Like, this is like bucket list sort of things. I need to make something, almost as beautiful as Spirited Away, or not Spirited Away, sorry, Song of the Sea, if not just as beautiful as Song as the Sea. God, I'm rambling on and on. This is easily the most jumbled I've ever been in any of my Let's Animates, but seriously, you need to check this movie out, like right now. Like, I don't care what you're doing. You're in the middle of doing your job, even though you're listening to this anyway. Screw you. Watch Song of the Sea right now. You will be a better person once you do. Anyway, I think that's all I'm going to cover for this episode. Thank you guys so much for listening to my ramblings and my gushing and my geeking out. I hope you'll join me for the next episode when I find something a little more constructive and less rambled to talk about than what I said here. Alright, thank you guys for listening. I'll see you later.